The first feature we're going to have a look at in Revit 2021 is the ability to link PDF files and also image files. On our Insert tab now, we have Link PDF and Link Image. Previously, we were able to import PDFs and import images, but the functionality now is the ability to link them. It works in the standard way of linking, so if I click Link Image, I come and choose my image and hit links in the standard way. And all functionality is exactly as it has been before. The only real difference is we now have a Manage Links when we select the image, and inside the Manage Links dialog box we have a tab for images. And in here we can see we have the standard linking functionality that we'd expect with Revit and CAD formats, so we're able to unload it, which can be useful, reload obviously, and reload from if we want to swap one image for another, which can be quite a useful tool. So this good functionality saves us having to keep deleting and re-importing from scratch each time. We can also link PDFs as well now. So again, this is importing PDFs was a feature introduced in the 2020 release. So now we can link these in. We get the same dialog box here, so we come and choose our PDF file. We can choose the resolution that we need, and we can also, if it's a multiple page, we can choose which page it is that we want to bring in. But this is just going to come in the usual way, and then we can place that down. Now, being a PDF file, it's slightly different to an image, so hopefully in our PDF someone's helpfully left the scale in there and it's to scale, so we can just come over here and actually select the correct scale for it. And then with a PDF, assuming it's made up of vector data from a CAD package, we're also able to enable the snaps, and then this means that we can start to snap to the lines inside of the PDF, so we can come and start to measure things across here. We can start to measure out of the PDF itself, and we can also use it whilst we create objects. So if we go back and we want to create ourselves a floor, we can use things like the Pick Lines tool in order to pick the lines inside the PDF, and then use those to start creating our model. And it also works well for inserting objects in. So again, if I can put some parking bays in, so the usual functionality of using the space bar to flip things around. So if I hover over the line inside the PDF, we can sort of rotate that so that it lines up, and then it's quite an easy feature to come and drop these things in. And again, with an instance parameter for the array on here, we can just select it and then drag it to length, snap into the PDF as we go. So then we can start to model from the PDF. One thing, if you're not really used PDFs at all inside of Revit, they are view specific, so we won't see them in 3D or in other views. We've got our draw order, so we can bring them to front, send them to back of the other kind of 2D objects that we've got inside of a view. And we can also choose the draw layer, so if we want to bring it in front of the model, we can do that as well, which will help us sort of compare things as we go through it. And again, same functionality, so if I select the PDF, I can go back into the Manage Links, and we've got the unload, the reload from, as we would expect from our usual sort of linking functionality in there. So nice, because it's a PDF and it chances are it is sort of drawn accurately into scale. It's quite easy to then reload if we get an updated version, revised version, or a different option. Again, we get the same sort of functionality as we reload from. And then I happen to know that we've got some changes around this little area of the parking in here. So as soon as I hit the apply button, and we can see that update. And then we're ready to move on with our updated PDF. So I think that's going to be a good, useful function. We can't always get DWGs when we need to link things in. Using the images as well, if they're old historical buildings, sometimes we've only got images that we can bring in. So being able to link those helps on the management of the file sizes, linking PDFs, being able to reload for alternatives in, will help with the workflow and help us collaborate with non-Revit users. The next new feature we're going to look at in the 2021 release is the ability to create slanted walls. In previous releases, the only way to achieve a slanted wall was to model a mass object and then use the wall by face or the curtain system tool to attach it to the face of the mass. This meant having to keep and update the mass for any changes that's required in your model as your design progressed, and was always a bit of a inefficient workflow, having to go back to edit the mass and then save that, reload it, and then update the actual walls and things that were attached to it. So in 2021, we've got a simple option now where our walls can just be set to be slanted. This applies to curtain walls as well as normal walls. So we create this as usual, just draw our curtain wall in, or any other wall for that matter. And what we'll have over here is a cross section and whether it's vertical or slanted. So let's grab our curtain wall again, and we can then swap this to be a slanted curtain wall. Obviously with mullions and things, we may have a few sort of issues as we use our curtain wall, but that's fine. So once we've got that, we have an angle from vertical as a parameter here. We can either type this in, so we can put in an angle here, and then it will lean over. And then, or we also have the grips up the top of the wall here to be able to drag that around. So whether we do that in a 3D view like this one, where we can sort of just angle it and rotate it around, or whether we go into a section view and that allows us to sort of snap onto things if we want to do that as well. And that gives us a nice easy way of working. We can also use the attach features still, so even though we've sort of changed the angle and slanted this around, we can still come and attach this onto something like a roof. Again, we've got some mullions that need deleting and recreating, but then once it's attached, we can sort of keep working with our angles here, and it will sort of stay attached to that roof there. So regardless of what we set our angle to be, even if we go put it in as a minus value, it's still going to go and attach itself onto our roof as we go through there. Let's put that to 10 degrees. And then we've got our angled curtain wall without having to create any masses or update those and keep updating the walls to face. It works with all of our wall types in here. So coming over to this view here, even with our new, in the previous release, new in 2020, we had the option to create elliptical walls. We can still sort of choose these and again just come and swap these to be slanted. One slight thing we've noticed sometimes is it doesn't always go in the angle you expect it to go in. So putting 10 degrees in there, and I was expecting those to actually lean out, so I need to put a minus number in there in order to get those working in the same way. It'll also work with chains of walls, so we can just select all of those. Let's spin those around a little bit. And again, same function. We can just say slanted and start to put an angle in there. So quite a convenient way when we need to make these slanted walls. One thing we will need to consider is just what we need to do with the openings, the objects that insert into our walls. Obviously our doors and windows are made vertical, so we may need to go and customize those a little bit to suit our sort of angled walls and things. Although I think, as you can see from there, we could get some quite nice effects from having the slanted walls with vertical windows. So that's the slanted walls feature in Revit 2021. Something that I think is going to be very useful, certainly make our workflows a little bit more efficient, and look forward to using it in this new release. The next new feature we're going to have a look at is the ability to rotate section marker text and for certain tags to align with the objects they're attached to. It's always been frustrating, especially with the long sheet names required for BIM protocols, to see the section marker text actually cutting through the section heads like we see here. Well, this is easily fixed now by changing the section marker head so that it actually aligns with the section itself. We've got one of them open here, and it's a real simple process. Once we've got down into that, it is just literally a case of ticking the rotate text with component, and then we're able to save this. I'd save this as a new type, as a new family and a new type, and then load this back into our project. And then the workflow that I've tended to use is to take the one that we already have and then come through and duplicate it. And then we can come and start to set up a different section tag. And then this way we have the ability to choose from a standard one or our aligned one. And this just allows us then to align the text along the actual section line itself. Nice and simple, just one single checkbox. And then that tidies up. We can use our long sheet names. On this one, I've just put the detail number at the end of it just to keep it clean. But that makes it a lot easier for when we've got our longer sheet names. The other part of this is also for annotation tags to align. So if I come along here and we place some multi-category tags, standard functionality is that they will be horizontal according to the view direction here. So wherever things are working, then we will just have horizontal tags as we go through. So again, this is the same operation as before, so I can take this tag, we can come and edit it. And it's exactly the same thing again, we're just going to check the box here to rotate the component. And at this instance, I'm going to move this one up by a few millimeters just to make this work a little bit easier, and then save this as a new tag. So now back in our project, we can select our tags and just swap them out for the ones that are set to be aligned. So selecting all of those and just swapping it for the new tag type. And we can see they all rotate round to line up with the walls and the objects that they're attached to. We can use this functionality also with the tag all feature. So we can just come down, I'll use the wall tag this time. I've got the linked objects here, so I just need to say OK. And instantly we get tags and they're all lined up with the walls. And this just makes it a lot easier for when we're doing wall finishes and things in there. We're not having to move tags around and try and line them up. Just by placing a tag there and getting that sorted in the family, we can just have that nicely lined up. So that's going to be a good feature for us to use in the future. It's certainly going to help us out with the presentation of drawings. Having the section marker text align up with the actual section line is going to help us out with the long sheet names. And also having the object tags align for wall finishes, certainly because not many plans are always orthogonal. Things are always at angles, so that's going to help us out no end. The next new feature that we're going to have a look at concerns the void objects inside of families. We're inside a family here, and this is going to be a door panel, and we have two void objects here that we're going to use to create some vision panels. The new feature that we have inside of 2021 is the option to choose whether these voids actually cut the solid geometry or not. So with this one selected here, over in its properties, we have a cuts geometry, and it's ticked, which means it will cut the geometry there. Obviously, we can untick it so that it does not cut the geometry. The real sort of advantage to this is being able to actually associate this to a family parameter. So we can choose that this gets associated to the top panel parameter there. And that means that we'll be able to then choose whether we cut each panel individually. And also just to show how we've got this working is we've created some glazing panels, and these are also have a visibility parameter which is linked up to the same parameter that we're using for the cuts geometry. That way when the void actually cuts, the panel will be visible, and when the void doesn't cut, the panel will be switched off. So back in our project with the door family, with it all set up and working now, we've got the two doors here, they're both the same family, We've got these set up as instance parameters here, and we just have some checkboxes so that we can tick that we've got the vision panels as we need them. This way we can use the same door family but specify whether it has vision panels by instance. Prior to this feature, we would have to use parameters to physically move the void objects away from the solids, and this can be problematic and lead to extended bounding boxes. This new functionality will allow a much cleaner workflow, and we can potentially reduce the number of families we need to create in our libraries. Obviously not just with doors, but anything that may need cutting, be it furniture, joinery, etc. I think this feature will be very useful in the future and is worth incorporating into our family libraries. The next new feature that we're going to look at is the ability for us to switch off filters in views. So in the view that we have here, we're using some filters to color in the different floor types. So let's get into our visibility graphics. And on the filters tab here, you can see we've got our floor types and we've got some patterns associated with those. And that's what we're seeing visible in the view. Previously, if we wanted to turn these off so that we didn't see the patterns, we would literally have to pick on and remove the filters. But now in 2021, we've got the option here to disable the filter. So we can just untick these and then the filters will get switched off. We can see that in the background there. We don't actually have to delete the filter itself and lose all of its settings. We can just enable it and disable it as we need to. And then that's going to save us a lot of time sort of swapping out view templates and changing around, deleting things and resetting things up. So small piece of functionality, but one that's going to come in quite useful in the future. The next new feature that we're going to have a look at is the changes to the realistic shading mode in Revit 2021. So the view we have on the screen is 2020 on the left-hand side and 2021 on the right-hand side. They're the same models. This has just been upgraded into the latest release. And there are some changes in the realistic shading mode, which are helping to make it faster to navigate and actually just improve the visualization in general. So in the 2020 version, we're all used to the changing modes down here, and we've got our standard wireframe, hidden line, shaded, realistic. There's also the ray trace option, whereas over in our 2021, the ray trace option is now gone. Again, in the 2020 version, if I go into the graphic display options, we have our photographic exposure control. So if I swap this into realistic mode, then I can choose to enable the photographic exposure or not. In the latest release, if we go into the same dialog box and swap it to realistic, then there's no option to enable it. It is just permanently switched on. Whenever we go into realistic mode, the exposure control is enabled. And this means that it's we don't have to manage it ourselves. It's automatically switched on, and then it's easier for us to use the realistic mode and get better results with this. So if I hit apply on both of these, we can then see the difference between the two. So initially, let's close these down. We can see that there's a small amount of difference. The main changes are that in the later release, it's going to be a lighter view. So looking around the sort of cutlery, around the plates and things around the tables, in the newer version, it's a bit lighter. It's a bit easier to see the definition than it is in the previous versions. We're also going to see a lot more difference when we've got artificial lighting switched on as well. So if I swap back into this version, 2020, come down to our lighting and swap it to our interior version there. This, in the older version, would enable this anyway, so we've got the same settings. We will have the same settings, so let's hit apply on this one. And then we can swap into this view here and do the same thing. So down to our lighting for interior only, and then just to compare the two, we can see we've got our exposure control set to 8 on both of these. So exactly the same settings. I'll normally turn the edges off because that improves the realistic view ever so slightly. And then we'll say OK to both of these. And now we can see a much more marked difference. The newer version is much lighter, a lot easier to see the detail. There's a lot more sort of darkness and contrast going on in the earlier version just there. And we've got some real nice sort of highlights and shadows and reflections and things coming onto our metallic surfaces. So that's just a general, a really good improvement in the quality of the realistic shading that we're going to get in 2021. If you've got older models, when you open them up and save them in the 2021 version and go into the realistic settings, then we'll get this much improved view and display for our models. Certainly something that's going to be of benefit to our visualization as we go forward. Generally, we see a lot of people taking it to external rendering engines such as Enscape or Twinmotion, and they're still great. They're still going to have their place, but maybe just to see some of the slight changes and some of the functionality, we can use the realistic shading inside of Revit itself, and then that's going to be a slightly quicker workflow and give us a slightly faster representation of what we need, and we can still work with all of this live and make changes to it and see it update straight away. Definitely a worthwhile improvement in the latest version.